Hello and welcome. Yes, finally I managed to get a video out on the Flanker, one of the new planes that came out in the update that came out like 10 days ago now, something near enough. So I know I've taken my time. I know, but it's taken a while for me to unlock it, okay? And then to spade it, and then to find a decent match that I could record and sort of show you a few things. And it's just hard, okay? Because I don't play RB, where the RP is a lot better, because RB is just honestly, I gag whenever I start an RB match. It's just horrible. I hate it. It is. I mean, if you like RB, fine, right? But it's just not for me. Flying a plane with a mouse, like with a little, a little aim pointer thing, telling the plane where to fly instead of actually flying it myself. No thanks. Yes, but I finally managed to make one out, get one out, and I wanted to make a video specifically on the Flanker first, just because I think a lot of people have the wrong idea of this plane. And what I want to talk about for it is the fact that you shouldn't necessarily be dogfighting the Flanker. I mean, you can do it, but only as a last resort. If you remember, if you played the game like 3 years ago or something, I think the Flankers sit in a very similar spot right now to what the Phantoms used to sit in, you know, back when it was Phantom versus MiG-21 at top tier. And what I mean by that is the fact that the Phantoms were basically missile buses, and they didn't have the insane turning ability back then that they that some of them have now. I'm also like sick, by the way, so just bear with me. But the Flankers are kind of in a similar spot because they're missile buses, but they can't necessarily dogfight. Now, the difference with the Flankers is you can get one solid turn in a fight because it can do that Cobra thing, right? But you're not going to you trade your rate fighting ability for that. And to be honest with you, if you're playing against someone in an F-16 or an F-15 or something like that, and they play their cards right, I just see no way of you actually killing them right now with the way Sim is. And I'm sure a lot of you have been getting kills in your Flankers, right? But when you're judging how good a plane is, I feel like you should judge the plane always when it goes up against someone who knows the weaknesses of the plane that you're flying. When the other person knows the weaknesses, they can exploit it. They can try to exploit those weaknesses. If the other person doesn't know the weaknesses, then they're not going to try to exploit those weaknesses, and then you might win the fight. But it's kind of like you have to kind of, it doesn't really work like that. You can't have like an objective test of which plane is better in that sense. And with the way the Flanker is right now, I don't think it's a good plane. It's very fun. You can suppress people with your ERs, but I just don't think it's a good plane. Now, that's in the dogfight sense, in the close range stuff. Now, what you're going to be seeing in this video is me trying to do BVR. Now, BVR stands for Beyond Visual Range, and that is essentially, so, radar missiles and radar play and stuff like that, and firing stuff off at 20 miles and whatever. Basically anything before you get to the merge. And in this video, I'm going to show you, or I'm going to try and show you how to sort of use your advantage in that sense, because this thing does get 6 R-27 ERs, which are the best semi-active radar-guided missiles in the game. You can also take 4 27 ERs and take 2 ETs, but I'm not going to do that in this video because you need to adopt a bit of a different playstyle with those types of missiles. I'm not going to be showing off the R-73 here. I'm just going to be showing off the radar and what you can do with the R-27s. Now, as you've probably noticed, I'm on Afghanistan, and I'm constantly flying over this mountain range here. Specifically, I think it's the eastern mountain range on Afghanistan. The reason I'm doing that is because Afghanistan has two main mountain ranges. You have one in the east and you have one in the west, and then in the middle you have a few mountains, but it's mainly flat. There's a lot of flat area, and because War Thunder has this thing called multipathing, we all know what multipathing is. It's when you fly close to the ground and someone launches a radar missile at you, and the radar missile just hits the ground in front of you, right? That's multipathing. Now, it is, as far as I know, it is a realistic thing. This is something that does occur in real life. But War Thunder just has it scaled up like to 10, basically. That's how it works. So it works a lot better in War Thunder than it does in real life. Now, when you're flying over mountain ranges like this, it can be quite hard to skim the ground like consistently because the terrain goes all up and down and whatever. Which is why I think if you're trying to play the flanker, you should stay away from flat maps like Denmark or Sinai. Smolensk is another flat one. Even honestly, something like what's it called, Rocky Canyon. Because Rocky Canyon is kind of like deemed as like a bit of a BVR map, but when you think about it, it's actually quite flat. I know you get like the canyon bit in the middle, but the rest of it is honestly quite flat, and it's quite easy to skim the ground, and that's why when it comes to the Russian planes, you know, like the MiG-29 as well, in a sense, the main advantage that the Russian planes have is that R-27, and if you're on maps that just allow people to dodge all of your radar missiles by flying low, it kind of negates that advantage that the Russians have. So that's why I think you should stick to maps like Vietnam, Afghanistan, even Spain. Spain's actually a really, really good map, and I think it's this hidden gem that the wider sim community hasn't really found yet, if that makes sense. I know Spain doesn't have the highest mountains or whatever, or the prettiest terrain to look at, but the terrain is very uneven, so it can be quite hard to actually skim the ground like you can on something like Denmark or Sinai, where it's just ridiculously easy, or even Dover Strait. Dover Strait's another terrible one. Right, but I want to turn your attention to the footage right now, and if you look at the radar screen in the right side of your screen right now, you'll see that I've picked up 2 targets. Now, I've just locked up one of them, and this is quite important because with semi-active radar-guided missiles, you can only ever take care of one target in front of you, one target at a time. So if 2 of them are flying next to each other, that can become a bit of an issue. Both of them have, however, just ducked below this mountain here. So what I've done is I've turned my radar off, as you see one of them just fly by there. And I've done that because usually you get into this like little, if you're in a mountain range, you get into this like little peekaboo match with your opponent. And turning your radar off, which I could have honestly just gone into IRST as well, it doesn't matter. It just negates the advantage that the F-16 has in its RWR, because the F-16 obviously has a huge advantage in its RWR. I skipped ahead a little bit here because I was just following them for a while. Now, I've picked up one of his friends, I've caught up to him, I fired the R-73 off, tracking him in IRST, by the way, not the radar, so he doesn't get a ping on the RWR. And I think I find his friend over here in front. I switch back to the radar mode just to make sure it's actually an enemy. And I think I end up launching an ER at him, so a radar-guided missile. And the reason I do it is because it's rear aspects. I'm close enough. There's nothing he's going to really be able to do there. As you can see, he tries to flare and stuff, but it still goes from. Yeah, so that's the tactic you can kind of do. With the F-16s, it's the situational awareness on the F-16s, or just the American planes in general, is just so superior to what the Russians have. The only thing that even comes close in the Russian arsenal is the SMT with its superior, you know, because it gets the same RWR that the F-16 does. Or, you know, I know it's not the same RWR thing, but for all intents and purposes, it works the same way in the game. And but the flight performance on that thing kind of sucks, and it only gets 2 radar-guided missiles. So, and that's actually a really huge advantage. Like, people don't understand how much of an advantage the RWR is. Maybe it's because, like, I don't know, most people are RB players or whatever, and in RB, you know, these kind of avionics don't really play that much of a role because you get so many like visual aids in that game mode anyway. But the RWR is insane for situational awareness and sim. Couple that with the cockpit visibility of the F-16 as well. It's just, I feel like people that only play America in the sim game mode don't fully grasp how much of an advantage it actually is to have that. And the fact that their radar picks up targets so much quicker, and they have invisible missiles and stuff. I'm not going to get into the, you know, what's fair and what isn't, and the meta and stuff, but it definitely is an advantage. I mean, they even tell you the range now, I think, since the last update, which can be really handy, especially if you're doing this kind of like BVR fighting and you're trying to prioritize what kind of target you should engage first. The Russian radar doesn't even show you the range. It doesn't even. I think it still shows you friendly pings as well. I don't know if it doesn't RB or not, but it shows you friendly pings, so it can be kind of hard to distinguish who's even friendly or whatever, whoever's pinging you, like it always has been. And they don't show you the range, which is another big advantage, or a big disadvantage in that case for the Russians. Which is weird because I thought the Russians were the ones that actually developed the signal strength system. Right? Wasn't the Russians that, like, the Russian RWR was the first RWR that kind of gave you an indication of the range? It's kind of weird that War Thunder hasn't modeled that. And I'm just seeing the footage now. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so this is kind of the same deal. 2 people again. I engage one, kill one, but obviously because I can only take out one at a time, the other one gets me with his Sparrow. And in that situation, I honestly just should have turned around, because I think I spotted them at like 10 miles. That would have been enough time, the speed I had to turn around and evade their missiles. But I was greedy and I decided to go for the kill. But that is something that you need to be wary of when you're playing, especially at high altitude, because at high altitude, especially with the contrails and stuff, everyone just sees you, and whenever someone sees a contrail, everyone points their nose up to identify, points their radar at it. Oh, what is that? Is that a friendly or is that an enemy? And if it's an enemy, they just beeline it up to you. So you do need to be quite observant, and that's again where I think the RWR that the Americans have really does help. The only, again, I'm really trying to like hammer in here, the only advantage that the Russians have is the R-27. That's the only advantage that the Russians have. The AIM-9M is a better missile than the R-73 in sim, just because it's invisible. Just having invisibility, not having the enemy not know when you're firing a missile at them is such a huge advantage. Plus, I think it has better flare resistance as well than the 73. But don't quote me on that. And you could definitely make an argument that that's like, oh well, nimble. I mean, but that's realistic. That's the way it is, or the way it was in real life, or whatever. And yeah, okay, with my knowledge of aerial combat from the 80s and whatever, I would agree with you. Yeah, that's probably is realistic that the Americans just had an advantage. I think that the R-27 ER was even like a 90s missile. I think that when the ER came out, the AMRAAM was already in service, so that's not necessarily that realistic. It's just that the Russians would have even been worse off, if it would have been completely realistic. But if that's what you want from your video game, then fair enough. But I think what was it that one meme actually that I saw? I think it was on the Wolf on the Reddit, of the this singer or whatever chanting to the crowd. It's like, who wants historical matchmake, and everyone cheers, right? We do. And then who wants to play the underdog, and it's just silence. There needs to be an incentive to play the weaker side. Then if you want complete realism, in that case the Americans will just stomp over everyone else. Then there needs to be some sort of incentive to play the weaker side, otherwise they're just not going to get played, right? And this is the issue that we ran into last patch when when the Block 50 got introduced, and all the Russians was the MiG-29 to go up against it. Nobody wanted to play the Russian side, right? You just couldn't. If you wanted to fly the F-16 or even the F-14 or just play America in general at top tier, you just couldn't find matches because there were no enemies. And then when you did find a match and you started having fun, God forbid you started actually getting kills in your F-16 and stuff, the enemy team would just leave. The Russians would constantly, or the red side would constantly be outnumbered, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, and it just wasn't a fun experience. And this is exactly what's going to happen if we carry on in the trajectory that we are. And this is why we have things like the R-27 ET already in the game before the AMRAAM, right? Just to give the Russians a little bit of an advantage. But what I'm saying is, it's you can't have one side completely overpower the other. It doesn't work in any video game, and it's not going to work in War Thunder, and it's definitely not going to work long term. And I think long term, it's probably going to kill the game mode. Not that Gaijin really cares about sim, but yeah. Having said all that, I mean, it's not absolutely terrible right now. We did just have the biggest update of the year. A lot of people are playing the game. You can consistently find matches for both sides. You can play Russia, you can even play America pretty consistently now, which is definitely good. I don't think it's going to stay like this. I think in a month or two, once the hype starts dying down and more people figure out how to actually play the planes that they have, and more people have stuff like the F-15 and people start playing the F-16 again and whatever, I think I think it's going to go back to maybe not quite as bad as what it was right after the Block 50 got released, but I think it's going to go back to it being slightly difficult to find blue side games. So just real quick, before I run out of time, I just want to share one little tactic with you guys, and it's to do with multipathing. So multipathing is obviously that thing that if you fly close to the ground, the missile just crashes into the ground in front of you or whatever. But one thing that you can do is, if you have someone in a radar lock, like I have right now on the screen, and you fire a missile from a really high angle, so the missile comes down on top of them at quite a steep angle, there's two things that can happen. One is, if they're multipathing, if they're close to the ground, the missile's a lot more likely to just the path that the missile's going to hit the ground in, it's a lot more likely to sort of intercept the plane, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but I just find a lot more success even when people are flying close to the ground if the missile's coming from a very steep angle, ideally 90 degrees. Obviously the missile isn't going to fly to the side or whatever, it's just going to fly straight to the ground, but the plane's in the way if it's 90 degrees. So the higher the angle, the more of a chance you have of this sort of happening. And then another thing is, if you're at high altitude, a lot of people are going to want to fire a missile back at you, and not a lot of people use the radar tilt feature. I'm not even using it in this video because I find it disgusting that we can't use it without activating the gyro. People will instinctively point their nose up to you in order to get a radar lock, and obviously if they do that, they're not flying close to the ground, and you can kind of trick people into sort of, you know, gaining altitude a little bit and flying into your missile. It sounds like a really simple thing, but trust me, the psychology really works on that. Like, you'd be surprised. You should try it. Also, before I end the video, I just want to say thank you for the 1,000 subscribers that we reached. Like, I think it's like 4 months ago now, so I'm quite late on this, I get that, but I did take a bit of a break, and then during that break it happened, yeah. But yeah, when I started making these videos, I didn't expect anyone to really watch them. You know, one, the fact that War Thunder Sim content generally doesn't get that many views, just because, you know, not that many people are actually interested in flight sims for whatever reason, because flight sims are actually awesome, right? But, you know, like, normal people don't seem to agree. And I just didn't think content that I would make would actually kind of interest people. I mean, these videos are still pretty amateur, right? It's just me talking. My commentary skills aren't amazing or whatever, but, you know, I think it's a thing I'll probably just get better at over time. But yeah, no, it was really nice, and all the people that recognize me in game as well, and they say hello and stuff. It actually just, I might not answer every time. You know, sometimes sometimes people text me stuff and I'm in the middle of fighting or something. But it is generally like pretty nice actually reading that. So thank you. I won't get any. You know, I'll leave it there because it will get cringy or whatever. But yeah, no, just cheers. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video though. I hope I inspired you to try maybe like a different tactic with the flanker or something, maybe if you've been struggling with it, and hopefully I've inspired some people to try some different maps other than just Denmark and Sinai all the time. But yeah, no, thank you very much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.